Have you ever seen a movie that's so bad, it actually loops all the way back around and becomes a kind of genius? Well, today we are diving headfirst into one of the strangest stories in all of cinema, the story of a film called The Room, and, more importantly, the deeply mysterious man who made it.
Okay, so our story kicks off with a movie that completely defied everyone's expectations. Just, not in the way the creator probably hoped. We're talking about an absolute train wreck, a critical disaster that somehow, against all odds, became this huge cult phenomenon.
So when The Room came out back in 2003, the reviews were, well, they were brutal. It was unanimous. Critics didn't just dislike it, they were totally baffled by it. The dialogue was bizarre, the plot was all over the place. The acting was something else entirely. By any normal standard, it was a total, absolute failure.
But then, something genuinely incredible started to happen. People started showing up, and not to make fun of it, but to celebrate it. Midnight screenings blew up into these huge, interactive parties. You had fans dressing up as the characters, shouting the lines back at the screen, even throwing plastic spoons and footballs around the theater. It stopped being just a movie. It became this amazing, shared experience. So you gotta ask, right? Who on earth could be the mind behind something like this? Well, this is where the story takes an even weirder turn. See, the whole film was basically the vision of one single person who did, well, pretty much everything. And that one man is Tommy Wiseau. He wasn't just the main actor, oh no. He was also the writer, the director, and the producer. He was the entire engine behind The Room. Which, of course, brings us to the biggest question of all. Who is Tommy Wiseau really? For years, the most basic things about him, like his age, where he's from, where he got his money, have been a total blank slate, and that mystery has just fueled all this wild speculation. Yeah, trying to figure out his background is like trying to solve a puzzle where none of the pieces fit. It's just a mashup of his own wild stories and what little bits of info other people have managed to dig up.
And the difference is, it's just staggering. So on one side, you've got Tommy's version. He's from New Orleans, lived in France, was born in the late 60s. But then you have official documents and research that tell a totally different story. That his real name is Tomasz Wickiewicz, he's from Poznan, Poland, and he was born in 1955. That's a difference of like 13 or 14 years. His best friend and co-star, Greg Sestero, actually laid out this really fascinating, though totally unverified backstory in his book. The story goes that Tommy worked in France, moved to Louisiana, and then wound up in San Francisco selling these little bird toys on the street. And that's apparently where the name comes from. Wiseau is supposedly a mix of the W from his Polish last name and the French word for bird, Wiseau. Now, according to Tommy himself, there was one single event that changed everything, a really bad car accident that he almost didn't survive. He says that was the wake-up call that made him finally decide to go for it and chase his dream of making movies in Hollywood. And boy, did he go for it. Which brings us to the making of his masterpiece, or as a lot of people call it, his disaster piece. And the $6 million question at the heart of it all. $6 million. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's a budget that could have paid for a bunch of indie films, and it was all poured into this one baffling project. For a first-time filmmaker who nobody knew, that number isn't just big, it's the core of the whole mystery. So of course, the first thing everybody asks is, where on earth did he get that money? Tommy's story is that he got rich importing leather jackets from Korea and from some smart real estate deals. A lot of people on set found that pretty hard to swallow. Some even whispered it might be some kind of money laundering thing, though to be clear, that has never, ever been proven. And get this, the story for The Room didn't even start as a screenplay. Nope, it was actually an adaptation of a gigantic, 540-page novel that Tommy had also written himself. He didn't just write a script, he wrote a book the size of a doorstop. You see, Tommy really saw himself in the same league as the greats. He was a huge fan of Hollywood legends. We're talking James Dean, Marlon Brando, Orson Welles. In his mind, The Room was going to be his epic, a serious, dramatic tragedy just like the classics. And you can see that influence so clearly in the movie's most famous line, that totally over-the-top cry, "You are tearing me apart, Lisa!" That was a direct shout-out to a scene with his hero, James Dean, in Rebel Without a Cause. So, what do you do after you've made the worst movie ever made? Well, for Tommy Wiseau, it was just the beginning of this incredibly unlikely career path that turned him into a genuine pop culture icon.
Yeah, he definitely did not just disappear. He kept making things. He created a sitcom called The Neighbors. He got back together with Greg Sestero for a movie called Best Friends. And more recently, he directed a monster movie called Big Shark. The Wiseau universe just keeps on growing.
But the moment everything changed was in 2017, with the movie The Disaster Artist. It starred James Franco playing Tommy, and it told the absolutely wild story of how The Room got made. That movie was a huge hit, and it took this niche cult story and shot it straight into the mainstream.
But even with all this new attention and fame, Tommy has guarded his personal life like a fortress. This quote from him in 2017 really says it all. He believes his private life should stay private. And honestly, for the most part, he's actually managed to pull it off.
So, after all this, what do we make of him? Is Tommy Wiseau some kind of misunderstood artist, a genius whose vision was just too weird for us to understand? Or is he an accidental icon, a guy who just happened to create something so uniquely terrible that it circled back to being brilliant? You know, maybe, just maybe, the real answer is that he's a little bit of both.